Welcome to 101.1 FM WBRU LP WFOO LP WVVX Providence. I'm your co-host, Dhruv Anand,
And I'm your co-host, Alejandro Jackson,
and this is the Outta Pocket Podcast.
where we pull conversation topics out of our pocket.
And occasionally, go out of pocket.
So on today's show, we're beginning a new series that we're calling Quickfire Philosophy. So essentially, we're going to cover 4 philosophy questions over the course of the show and just give our thoughts on each one and just, create some interesting discussions.
Yeah.
Hopefully leave you guys pondering the universe. So,
Yeah, and a quick disclaimer, I am not a philosophy major.
Neither of us are.
Neither of us are. Don't really know a lot about the subject besides, like, The Good Place and, like, YouTube. So, like, yeah. Two amateurs talking about the secrets of the universe. Let's get into it.
Yeah. So for the first one, we wanted to touch upon a question that you actually have referenced in the uniqueness of perspective episode, the trolley car problem. So I don't know if you want to give a little introduction to what that is.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, not not a philosophy major, so I don't exactly remember who first came up with the question, but it's basically along the lines of or at least when the question was originally formatted. There's been a bunch of variations since, but you are in control of like a lever, and that lever sets a trolley car on 2 different tracks. If it goes on the first track, it'll kill 5 random people or something to that effect. If it goes on the second track, it will kill 1 person, but it's someone you know. So basically, the question is like, what track do you put the car on? Do you kill the 5 people, or do you save 5 people and sacrifice?
A relative.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously I feel like, like you were saying, there's so many variations on the question. Like, what if like the 1 person on the track has a cure for cancer? Like, and then, obviously, basically the whole argument, it's a utilitarian, right, if I'm not mistaken, sort of
Yeah.
philosophical question. So essentially you try to maximize, the common good of man, and so like that is supposed to help like guide your decision and what you choose. So I guess
So yeah, like utilitarianism, at least from what I gather, is like it's not the only school of philosophical thought. It's far from it.
No,
But
yeah.
is basically based around the idea of ensuring maximum happiness for the maximum amount of people for the maximum amount of time. And that's like, and basically as long as like, as long as more people are happy, even if 1 person is sad, like utilitarianism only cares about the net effect, right? So
yeah, essentially.
yeah, the sort of utilitarian view, I guess, would be to save the 5 people over the 1. Because like logically speaking, if those 5 people are young enough, they'd have more of their life to live out, which means they have, between the 5 of them, it's more likely that they'll generate more happiness over the course of their lifetime than 1 person can.
So yeah, I don't know, like personally, it's a tough like,
Yeah, bro.
because if you really like sit down and put yourself in that situation, it's very hard to like just be able to just be like, oh yeah, that relative of mine,
And also,
it's been good.
you
It's
could
been
always
fun.
you could always say these things, but you never really know how you'll react in the situation unless you're actually in it.
Yeah, for sure. And so like, and then obviously, when you like, I'm gonna assume you don't know these 5 people in depth, or like, so you like, you just know they're 5 people, right? And you know nothing about like their background, their history, or like.
I think so. Yeah.
So like.
I mean, as I said, it's such a famous problem that there's been so many variations. And some of the variations I've seen, you do actually do know more information about the 2 groups of people.
What do you? it's hard to. I feel like. What do you think you would do? Like,
What do I think I would do? Bruh, I guess it depends on the person. Uh,
that's the thing. Like, it's such a
mm-hmm.
because like, right? Like, if it's and I've been I'm not gonna lie, I've been studying too much biology lately, so like, cause right, so something we learn about in biology is like kin selection and
Mm-hmm.
like, um, helping copies of your genes survive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like essentially there's a relationship. It's like BR is greater than C. I don't know if you. Okay, interesting. Okay, so like it essentially is B stands for the benefit. R is the degree of relation between you and like the other organism, right? And then C is cost. So essentially the relationship, it's basically a general relationship that outlines if the benefit times the degree of relation is greater than the cost, then it's like it's a worthy like sacrifice. So or essentially like what
Mm-hmm.
it's used when like, for example, so like mothers that nurse their young, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like why do they? The question it was like that they were trying to answer was like why do they even do that? And essentially, essentially it was like because the mother's like basically the benefit is helping essentially copies of the genes of the parents' genes survive through their offspring. So that's the benefit, and then like it's like times the degree of relation, and it actually adds up. So like let's say like let's say a dog has 5 pups or something, then it's like basically for siblings and parent to child, the degree of relation is 0.5, but then you add it up for the number of like offspring, right? So it'd be like 0.5 times 5, which is 2.5, right? So it'd be like benefit times 2.5,
Mm-hmm.
right? So basically, essentially, if the
It's like weighting the
yeah.
benefit.
So essentially, like I feel like I'm kind of applying this to the situation because like right, because you were saying it depends on who it is.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if it's like an immediate relative, it's gonna be very hard to like be like to basically sacrifice them. And so I was like, just when you referenced that, it made me think of this whole like benefit versus cost thing and like I guess funny enough though, it'd be the inverse if that makes sense. Like I see in this situation, it feels like the relationship is, um, if benefit is less than cost times degree of relation, if that makes sense. Because the cost to you would be losing a relative, and then
Mm-hmm.
the degree of relation would be how close our relative is to you, and that would amplify like
That's interesting.
the cost,
Yeah.
as opposed to, and then like the benefit would be
Saving those
those
people.
5 people, and so like if it was my mom, I couldn't do it. Like I'm gonna be straight up.
Honestly, same, bro.
Like so, and so it's just I don't know. It was just an interesting connection I made about like, you know, at the end of the day, like I feel like humans are selfish by nature. Like it's just
Mm-hmm.
because we're programmed to survive. We're programmed to want to do what's in our best interest so that we live, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like yeah, anybody can easily like anybody can talk about taking the moral high ground and be like, yeah, like I'd save the 5 people because you know common good and it's about saving, like you were saying, 5 people who can I guess produce more happiness and like over the course of their lives than just one. But like we were saying, when you're in that situation, it's hard, and like how we tied it into this whole like inverse benefit cost relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Um, especially when it's somebody very close to you. Like I personally, I don't think I could do it. Like like members of my immediate family, like I would choose them.
Yeah.
Personally, and I know that's some Aaron Yeager. That's an Aaron Yeager mentality, but like,
Bro really said, bro really kicked off the rumbling. Bro, Aaron Yeager is out here solving the trolley car problem.
for real.
But
But yeah, personally, like, that my take is
Mhm.
I personally couldn't do it if it was like a very close relative of mine.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The final take I've heard, and there's another school of philosophy that's basically like every human life is equal. So the trolley car problem basically comes down to a coin flip. Like you can't really quantify a
Oh,
human
for
life in
sure.
terms of happiness generated over a lifetime.
Well, yeah, obviously it depends. Like, for example, like, and this is like a general statistics thing. Like, when we're measuring like statistics, there's so many. Like, we were talking about like R values
Mhm.
in lab, and like
Mhm.
um the person running lab was talking about how there are so many ways to like calculate an R value.
Mhm.
I guess the same thing. Like, what metric are we using to I guess measure like the value of a human life?
Yeah, man.
And so funny. So wait, I guess I understand for clarification. So every human life is equal, as in like regard because you were saying it's down to a coin flip. Does that mean like the 5 lives are equal to the one?
Yeah,
Oh,
pretty
interesting.
much.
I guess like
I mean, or in like in other versions of the trolley car problem, it's not 5 to 1. It's more just like I've seen it as like two groups of people, one of which are like minimum wage workers, like trapped in a building, and the other is like rich like trust fund babies trapped in the same burning building. Like, which group would you choose if you only had time to save one? Something to that effect.
mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, and that also like that perspective raises like an interest. Sometimes it's not just like a clear cut problem, and there's also elements of like social justice in the problem that
Oh
you could
yeah, for
add that
sure.
make it especially relevant to like the world today. So yeah, TLDR, how do you measure, you know, a human life
Yeah.
in daylights and midnights, in sunsets, or
Mm-hmm.
in cups of coffee? Uh,
Yeah. So
525,600 minutes, y'all. Come
yeah.
see Rent.
What's the date?
Yeah. The Brown Musical Forum is producing Rent, in Alumni Hall, Friday the 18th through Sunday the 20th.
Yeah, and my co-host is in it, so hey.
That's what's up. That's what's up.
But yeah, for sure. Quick plug.
You had to
No.
hit him with a quick plug.
But yeah, for sure. So but yeah, I guess moving on, cause hit him with that TLDR, yeah, and next problem we wanted to cover was the ship of Theseus for all the WandaVision fans out there. But
That's
yeah,
what's up.
no, I actually, just personally, when I was watching WandaVision, I thought this was a very cool way to end a fight. Basically,
Yeah,
like,
bro. The Vision was just out here walloping the other Vision, and
mhm.
then they're like philosophical discussion, and the other Vision was like, yes, while like Wanda and Agatha were just like throwing hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the ship of Theseus, I remember, and also reiteration of the disclaimer, not philosophy majors, but yeah, from what I understand, it's that if you have a ship, right, and then you slowly like replace every plank with a new plank, is it still the same ship?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm
Um.
like,
Yeah. Yeah. Like if a plank rots, you replace it, or like you could apply it to like anything, bro. Like if I have like a faulty phone part,
mm-hmm,
I replace it, and then I just keep doing that until the whole phone is like brand new.
mm-hmm.
Is it the same phone?
I don't think so,
And all right, elaborate on that.
because like, right, I'm okay. This is okay. Actually, nuance. I guess this has been so like, I would argue if you replace it with the same type of parts, if that makes sense, right?
Mhm.
And the end product is the same, sure. Then I would say you could call it the same thing. So like, let's say you have the ship of Theseus, right? Wood rots, you replace every plank with a new one. I think as long as you replace the plank with like I don't know, say they use mahogany. I don't know, favorite type of wood. It's nice. um, as long as you replace it with more mahogany, then I would say yes, you can dub it the same ship. But like you're like, let's say I have an iPhone 12, right? Faulty part. I replace it with a part from like the iPhone 13, and I keep like slowly replacing it until it becomes an iPhone 13. Then I don't think
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can argue that it's the same ship. Like if I were to take, instead of mahogany, I use like oak, I would argue that it's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not the same ship.
Yeah, I guess it would come down to like functionality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because as long as the ship or like the phone still functions as like my phone
Mm-hmm.
or like the ship of Theseus,
Yeah.
then I'd still say it's like the same thing. But like, yeah, you mentioned like the sort of different parts. Like, what if it upgrades or like, I don't know, like,
Cause yeah, that's like, cause I was going, I guess, along the same lines as you was about functionality, and yeah, essentially what I was thinking was like, if the function is the same, like if the function doesn't change from the original, then I'd say yeah, you could dub it the same, like, and then I guess it also like, it also kind of, I guess, is more uh not tangible aspect of things, but like for example, let's say like a kid has a favorite teddy bear,
mm-hmm.
right, and he loses it, and you get him a new one. It's not gonna like feel the same, if that makes sense. There's like
Mm-hmm.
there's like an emotional
Mm-hmm.
or like, I guess, not tangible aspect to these things. So like, right, like I guess I guess it's become making the question even more like convoluted. But like, let's say, on this ship, these sailors like sailed some legendary voyage, and I don't know, sailed across the world, like found the fountain of youth. I don't know, right? And you have all these stories associated with the ship, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you like rebuild it, I feel like you won't have those same memories associated with it because it's not the same ship that like. And I guess this is kind of like how the WandaVision argument went, because it was like talking about, part of the argument had to do with like memories and like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, if you have the same memory. But anyways, that's
Wait, can you reiterate the WandaVision thing? Because at this point, I watched it like
wait, like what aspect of?
just like how the visions concluded it. Because I don't even remember when I watched it, but I think it was like
They kind of just
almost a year ago at this
like,
point.
yeah, what basically it was, yeah, they kind of just pondered it, but it was essentially like um the so I guess spoiler warning for WandaVision, but it's been a bit. Um, that vision, the vision within the like within Wanda's like world, the bubble, was like a construct made by her of like mind stone energy,
Mm-hmm.
and then the like vision original, or like the vision's original body was then taken by, I think, shields or sword, and they made a new vision. I guess it was a new vision with like using the parts from the original, but without the memories, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then like the vision from Bubble World was like, yeah, well, like, you know, are we the same, right? Because like basically like in theory, right, we're the same.
Mm-hmm.
I have the memories and you have like my body, right? And then he imparted his memories upon other vision,
Mm-hmm.
and my mind just kind of flew off to go contemplate like.
Mm-hmm. I'm low key very excited to see Vision return.
Me too.
Hopefully, like I always like the character, even though Age of Ultron was not really my favorite Marvel movie anymore. Like, I mean, it never was, but like at least back when it came out, you didn't have much else to compare it to.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, I always loved like the introduction of Vision. I thought he was like sick.
Mm-hmm.
Like when he pulled up with Mjolnir and you're like, hey yo, and then he like straight dusts Ultron. He's like, yeah, I am only a day old, and it's like yeah, that was based.
Yeah.
Like,
so I mean, I think like like I was saying, there's also like an emotional aspect to things where like, I guess you can attach like sentiment and memories and like feelings to tangible objects. And so like, right, if you replace an object, even though it's technically the same object, is it really the same? Like, I wouldn't say it's the same as the original, because I feel like, funny enough, I think the wear and tear of objects in a way adds value to them, which is funny because usually people argue the opposite, right? Like, you buy a brand new limited edition Pokemon card and you immediately put it in a sleeve and a binder and a box and a lockbox and the basement of like your house so that no particle of dust touches it, so that so it doesn't depreciate. But at the same time, there's a book that I read as a kid, and it's called The Velveteen Rabbit.
Oh, The Velveteen Rabbit, bro. Oh,
and essentially, it kind of argues the opposite, that like the more you use something, the more you I guess put it through the ringer. Essentially, the more like so the example in the book, in the story.
That book messed me up, bro.
That book, I read it like kind of recently. Like, I read it like I want to say like summer 2020 or something. Like,
nice.
All right, like, it's a kid's book, but I found it like in my house, right? And I just picked it up.
Yeah.
Gave it a read.
I think I read it in like first grade, so it's been a minute.
And so essentially the book argues that like, we're kind of digressing here, but I guess Outta Pocket Podcast.
Outta Pocket Podcast.
Essentially, it argues that, right? So you have this kid has a stuffed animal, and like, he has it for many years, and it gets very like worn and torn and whatever. And eventually he kind of, as he grows older, he starts to like stop playing with it. But essentially the book talks about how like, by like every time he picked that toy up, even though over time it slowly became even more worn and beat up, like he developed even more of an attachment to it, obviously. And so that's why I'm like, as arguing that, like, funny enough, I think in kind of opposite to like our usual typical like mindset that like the more something is like used, it depreciates in value. It argues the opposite, essentially, that like the more something is used, it, I guess, increases. Okay, actually, this is the best way I can put it. In society, we use money as common currency, right? So like whatever. So like you want to keep it as like, I guess, new as possible, so that if you need to like trade it to somebody, or you want to sell it or give it to somebody else, it is not. It's like, it's worth it to them. It's valuable to them, right? However, I think that instead of like basically what the book says, instead of like monetary, like money as like the currency, like you have like emotional currency, basically. Like the more you use something, the more like emotional currency you invest in it, if that makes sense, right? So essentially where I was going with all of this, because, a very long tangent, is that like with the ship, right? Like, let's say these sailors sail on the ship for a decade, right? And they attach like all these like memories to it, or like, right? When you rebuild that, like once the last the last old plank of wood rots and you replace it with a new one, I feel like it won't have the same like emotional weight as like the original did, because those same planks of wood do not carry the same like emotional attachment as like the original.
But I feel like the argument to be made here is, what if the change is so gradual that like people don't even notice? Like, if you're sailing for 10 years, chances are planks are gonna rot during that voyage. And so like while they're on the voyage, they could be replacing planks. So like even by the end of that voyage, not all of the original ship is there, but they could still be attaching emotional value. I don't know. So there's a reason it is a famous philosophical problem, and obviously we aren't going to be able to answer it in like 10 minutes.
So I think, I guess, before we, I guess, move on to the next one, because, obviously, I think, we want to give people some sort of take before we just like kind of completely leave the topic, right? I guess personally, I would say they're not the same. Like,
okay.
Okay, I guess kind of function wise they are the same, but
Mhm.
like in essence, if that makes sense, like, in
Mhm.
essence, whatever
Right,
essence
right.
is, right? I don't think they're the same.
Yeah, that seems like a good place to leave it.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So the next philosophical question that we wanted to move to, which is a bit of a funny one, I guess cut a bit of the, I don't want to call it tension because it's not really tension, but cut a bit of the gravity of like our conversation, right? Is we wanted to cover a philosophical question, Plato's beard, which is essentially how many hairs make up a beard. um, so yeah.
You wanna give us the intro? Because I'm not really familiar with this one.
Well, that's pretty much the question, right? So it's just that's about it, man.
Mm.
But I guess like cause I did a little, cause we pulled some of these questions beforehand, obviously, right? And so I was thinking about it and like what like in society, right? Like what do we define as a beard, or like when do we say like, oh yeah, like you grew a beard, and like in my head it was like when someone, I guess, has enough looking like, if that, I don't even know how to explain it. Like if it looks like you have enough facial hair covering your face, then like I guess you call it a beard, right? So my question is, what if somebody has, and obviously this is a bit unrealistic, but what if somebody has one very long strand of hair that just like covers their entire chin? Like, is that a beard? Because I would say yeah.
Covers their entire chin.
Like, yeah, a strand of hair so long that like it looks like they have a goatee, but it's just one strand of hair. Like, is that a beard?
Like it just like winds around.
Yep.
Shoot, right? I think we're getting back to the whole like, well, as long as it functions as a beard, then like.
I
Sure.
mean, I guess so, cause right. So what do we like? What are beards for? I mean, basically, hair essentially for human function is to keep us warm, right? It's to trap in heat and keep us warm. So like, let's say it's just one really long, windy strand of hair, but it does function as a beard and it keeps your chin warm. Yeah, it's a beard, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. Any thoughts?
Uh, um, dang, I'm like trying to read up on Wikipedia to see what's up.
I think yeah.
Yeah, this is like very much like I don't know. It seems like because it seems like there's a deeper argument to be had here.
Which is
Yeah, so it says that some dude posited this in like 1948, and he's like, it's like a riddle of non-being. Non-being must in some sense be, otherwise what is it that there's not?
So
uh
wait, you're saying non-being is being, like
yeah, I guess like nothing is something, right? Like if you're like, what's in that room, and you're like, nothing, that's still like.
I think they're contrapositives. Like I think one statement is a contrapositive. So like nothing is something. Well, cuz like I would I guess nah, let me take that back. Let me step back. I would define nothing as the absence of something.
Hmm.
Like the value 0 is used to represent nothing. Like it's used to represent absence of. That's why, like, I guess in my head, we can't divide by 0 because we can't split something up into nothingness. Like
Mm-hmm.
we can't just like, right. So actually, what is nothing? Right? Oh God.
Hey, bro.
Cause like, cause because I was just thinking about this, and we're kind of transition. This would be a good transition to our next topic, but I'll bring it up later when we touch upon it. Um, Essentially, nothing is what I would define to be as the absence of something, but like we can't energy and mass and matter. Energy and matter cannot be like created or destroyed, so we can't just like destroy something into nothingness, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it has to go somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we still have ascribed the value to mean nothingness.
Uh,
But how does that? Okay, well, what? All right, let's step back again. What does this have to do with the beard exactly? So, like you're saying,
I think the more I'm reading into it, I don't know if the question's really about the beard.
oh, so it's just
I don't know, bro.
well,
Yeah.
because the
So
original
basically,
question.
what I'm reading is the whole pun is that Plato's beard dulls Occam's razor, and Occam's razor is,
Hmm.
I want to say Occam was like a monk, um, in like some like Christian monastery in way back when, but like Occam's razor essentially says that the simplest explanation is the best explanation.
Yeah.
And there's an episode of House about this, and
Hmm.
it's goated. House MD, goated TV show.
Yeah.
But the whole argument that this dude makes is that like Occam's razor says like make the least number of assumptions. So um, only if only being has beings, that's less assumption. So if Plato's argument that like non-being also has being, you're making an assumption, and Occam's razor doesn't really qualify. That being said, I don't understand half the words I just said, and like honestly, it's probably like some philo major is gonna be in our DMs like, "Hey, bro, like y'all are messing up. I can't." So yeah, I genuinely very out of out of my depth here,
Hmm.
but like honestly, the original version of the question is kind of fun. How many beards? How many hairs make a beard? Like, sure, you could say like it's a matter of like, well, does it function as a beard? But you know me, bro. I was not blessed with the facial hair genes. Like I can't grow a beard for my life.
Hmm.
It's mad unfortunate, and it's like crazy because I got hair literally everywhere else, bro. It is like just not my face.
It'd be like that sometimes.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Hmm.
I'm like out here with like the like hairy arms or whatever, but I don't know.
No facial hair.
No facial hair.
I guess for me, my answer to the question because I remember, uh, low key like I want to say like last year. Um, I counted. Well, I'm quite young. I'm not gonna lie. Just so. Oh, whatever. I'm just gonna go on a little. I'm just gonna be straight up. Yeah. So like, I skipped the grade. So
Uh,
my everybody else was always like a year older, and so.
and also, while we're on the subject, happy belated birthday to my co-host. The
Thank
birthday
you.
was yesterday.
I
He's now
appreciate it.
finally a legal adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
18 years old, baby.
I feel like an old head, but
Bruh, I'm
yeah.
19. Don't give me that.
Yeah. So like, I want to say, I don't know, this was probably like 2021 to be honest. This was probably last year, like beginning of last year. I remember like looking at myself in the mirror and I counted the hairs on my chin. There was 12, right? So
No.
the answer to this question is, if there's more than 12 hairs, it's a beard.
I,
It's a
that's
beard.
facts.
That's the answer to
I
my
can
question.
respect it. I can
If there's
respect
more
it.
than 12 hairs, I'll call it a beard. Um, Fortunately, I'm past the 12, so hey, we take that.
Bro's rocking a goatee and a mustache.
It's a very light, it just makes me look a little bit older to make up for
The soul patch.
year I lost. Uh, but yeah, so I guess that's the answer to my question. My answer to this philosophical question: 12 hairs constitute a beard. But yeah.
I think my answer would be, uh, it doesn't matter how many hairs you have, because like I low key got hairs like growing that I do have to shave, but they never get like thick or bushy enough to actually be a beard.
I just thought here's another like thing to like, okay, what length of the hairs constitutes, because like,
Is it length we're talking about or
well,
density? Because
that's
I
the
feel like
thing,
they're
right?
different things,
That's
bro.
why, because like, it's like the original, or like at least the question that I stumbled across was how many hairs makes up a beard. But you could have a number of very short hairs, like,
Like me.
is that a beard?
Nah, bro. I wouldn't say I have a beard.
So, how many hairs of a certain length constitute a beard is essentially the question, right? Because then we could just make the argument because I feel like we have hair that like I guess grows pretty lengthy, and then like we also have like obviously I'm no I'm not I wouldn't call myself well versed in anatomy, but I feel like we have like very like small little like hairs like all over the surface of like our body, and so like do those constitute could those constitute beards as well?
Hey, bro. Our whole body is actually just a beard.
It's just we just walk around. I mean, if we're going by evolution and common ancestry, us being very closely related to apes, like they're basically walking beards. I mean, if you really think about it, like, man, Harambe was rocking that
R.I.P. Harambe.
that thick beard.
Man didn't deserve it.
So essentially, I'm still gonna stick with my answer. Okay, 12 hairs of at least an inch constitute a beard.
Of at least an inch?
Okay, at
bro,
least
an inch is long.
a centimeter. 10 millimeters. Okay.
No, it's like, and I'm trying to visualize it in my
millimeters,
head.
or not
Because
point
like, if you have like 12 hairs like spaced out and they're all a centimeter long,
now we're talking.
It's just gonna look goofy, bro.
Man, this question was supposed to be funny and very like short-lived. This question is
nah, bro. The facial hair is important. It's a discussion that needs to be had.
No, it is. So okay, so you're saying like if you look like a spike protein, right? And you got 12
a spike protein,
and you have 12 hairs that are just that are equidistant from each other, and they're all just spaced out.
All just like, what would that be? Pi over 6 radians.
Does that constitute a beard?
Bro, definitely not. Because all you gotta do is take a tweezer to them, and it's
okay.
boom,
So
it's
now
gone.
we're talking like X amount of hairs of a certain length of a certain space apart constitutes a beard.
Here's what I'd say. There's a bunch of different styles of beard, right? You could have like, just like the full face. You'd have the neck beard. You'd have the soul patch. I'd even argue that like sideburns and lamb chops are a form of beard.
Okay, I could argue that. If they're long enough.
You could have the Guy Fieri. You could have the full on handlebar. There's a bunch of different variations.
Here's the other. I guess like then it's also like within a certain area of the face. So it's like how many hairs of a certain length, of a certain distance.
We're just trying to define what a beard is at this point.
How many hairs of a certain length that are a certain distance, that are within a certain like distance away from each other, within a specific area of the face, constitute a beard. Because like, right, what if you have like if you have like 12 hairs on your forehead, is that a beard?
Bro, you're just a freak at that point.
I mean, hey, everybody build different.
12 equidistant hairs on your head just sticking out like
like Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, bro.
But I guess okay. My answer. 12 hairs that are 0.7 centimeters apart. And actually no. 12 hairs that are 0.7 centimeters in length and no more than 0.1 centimeters apart in the region below the ears but above the top of the neck and below the nose, or actually no, below the ears. I said I think that constitutes a beard. That's my definition of a beard. But yeah, that was a lot longer than I had expected that to be. So yeah, but moving on. So I guess the final question that we wanted to cover, which is a lot more deep than, to be honest, any of the previous ones
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about, is um, the beginning of the universe.
The Outta Pocket Podcast tackles the beginnings of the universe.
And obviously, this is a question we are never gonna answer. Like,
Nope.
I mean, well, by we I mean you and I, not
Mm-hmm.
the human race. Hopefully, one day we'll be able to find out the answer to this question. But essentially, I guess so. Something I've always pondered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is, we have this idea in science. It's something we learn in middle school, I'd say, right? We have law of conservation of energy and law of conservation of matter. Um, and so, or is it matter or mass? One of the two. Um, and so no, not matter. That's something. I mean, okay, it depends what you. No, I'm not. I'm gonna say mass because like matter, you can have different states of matter, and I don't know if that technically means but anyways, essentially, you know, we have these laws of conservation, right? And so if following them, we question like whether energy and mass have, like, the amount of energy and mass in the universe have always been there, and if not, where'd they come from? And so I guess that's something that I always kind of wondered. Uh, sitting there at my desk doing homework, I get bored, ponder off, stare outside the window, and just start to think about, I don't know, just essentially
Mm-hmm.
what kind of introduced like this source of energy, like where'd this energy in the universe come from? But I don't know. So, any thoughts?
Bro, you know I got thoughts. I spend way too much time thinking about the world and how it works and my place in it. But I will say, like, extra disclaimer here. Um, you know, now that like we've sort of come into an age where scientific thought really is the dominant form of thought throughout the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's and we take inherent skepticism to a lot of things, and we also understand our world a lot more than we did. The sort of realm for religious thought has gradually been like reduced because like in the ancient world you could even philosophy, like all the stuff that we talked about, like all these ancient philosophers were still largely influenced by religious schools of thought even when they were trying to describe the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like, I don't know if any like scientists studying like I don't know, doing PCR in a lab, would necessarily say like I'm explaining the natural world using a religious school of thought. So the realm of sort of the explanatory powers of religion has really de- decreased, I would say,
Mm-hmm.
from being able to describe anything and everything to more of like the realm of the intangible, like
Mm-hmm.
who are we, what are we here for,
Yeah.
like what should we do, what happens after we die,
Mm-hmm.
like is there a soul, yada yada yada, and probably most importantly, um where did we all come from, what why is the universe here. So that's an automatic disclaimer with this conversation, that it's hard, very hard to parse things between religion and science in this field.
Mm-hmm.
And like I I'm not you can't really invalidate people's beliefs
No. Yeah.
based on religion. But that being said, like this is just two dudes' opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And like our worldview are our worldviews are very much shaped by um, our upbringing and our exposure to various schools of thought in the West. So, that aside,
Yeah.
let's get into it. I would say, like, I do largely have a scientific worldview, and that, like pretty much everything to me, like, that's just my outlook. Like, I see things as, you know, like interactions between molecules and forces, and it sounds kind of corny, but like that's genuinely like that is a large part of how I see the world. Um and of course there's all sorts of models, because science is, the development of models to describe what we think are natural phenomena. We get the data and we're like, okay, let's come up with some theory as to why this data makes sense. And every now and then that theory doesn't check out, and then there's like a big paradigm shift. I'm gonna get off on a big tangent, so I have to reel myself back before we get too far off the beaten path.
We spoke about a beard for 20 minutes. So at this
Yeah,
point.
fair enough. But essentially, like, yes. So that being said, my science is a big part of my worldview, but I also would say that, given my upbringing, religious views are like still like important to me.
Yeah, and I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that science and religion have to be mutually exclusive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as for my thoughts on the beginning of the universe, I read Stephen Hawking's brief answers to the big questions. So they published that book right after he died. And like pretty much right out the gate, one of the first things he says, like some of the big questions that he tackled were straight up like, is there a God? Where did the universe come from? And there's obviously he has to start with those big controversial essays, because the later essays in that book are also really interesting. Like, where, could we go to space? Like, AI. He talks about these things. But the big ones are the question on everyone's mind. And Stephen Hawking basically says, he argues that, just as I was saying, religious thought has kind of, lost some of its spheres of influence in recent years. But like the one stronghold that it seems kind of impenetrable to science is like, where did the universe come from? Because if you look everything causally, you could have like a sort of deterministic view. That being said, because of the way the quantum field works, deterministic, like not everything in the universe abides by classical rules, especially at the smaller scale. But as you get to larger and larger scales, the sort of like superpositions that we see in the quantum world sort of collapse to more of what we would say are like classical rules. But I digress. Stephen Hawking's like, okay, if you say that every effect has a cause and you just keep rolling it back, right? We can explain the cause and effect with science. For majority of what we know, we could say, okay, that's science. But then we get back to the Big Bang. And Stephen Hawking's like, that's where religion would be like, we have the effect, the Big Bang. What's the cause? Like, we don't know. We genuinely have no idea. And Stephen Hawking is like, that's where a lot of people are like, okay, so there has to be a God. Like, or, some higher power entity, whatever, that kicked off the universe. My conceptions of that are like a little too much to get into right now. Otherwise, we'd be here for 2 hours.
Yeah, and I don't even have an answer.
Yeah, but my quick take on that is like, I don't necessarily like using the term God because it carries a lot of baggage. But I would conceive of it more as like the Force in Star Wars. rather than like white guy with a beard.
No, I can get back. Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
similar to what I would
yeah,
say my. I don't want to call them beliefs, but my I guess my thoughts are. I'm still I guess figuring all this out.
But Stephen Hawking is basically like, well, that's not necessarily true because given what we know about, quantum mechanics and thermodynamics, we could actually just say that the universe came from the singularity spontaneously. And as for the conservation of energy slash mass, because given the relationship, they are pretty much the same thing, just like you got to convert between them with a lot of energy. But yeah, it was all there in the singularity.
So I guess
So it's not that rule isn't necessarily violated.
I guess to be honest, for my sake, and I guess to some of the people listening, I mean, and it's just like a genuine question. Do you know like the definition of singularity, or like could you explain it to me if you like? Okay, because
So a singularity is, or at least the singularity in the context of this discussion, is like in before the Big Bang, there was a infinitesimally small point in space that contained all the mass of the known universe, and all the mass and energy of the known universe today. Somewhere along the line, that singularity rapidly expanded, like faster than we could possibly conceive. And within a few microseconds after that, like basically all that energy would like go out, and the universe is still expanding today. Not in the sense that like it's so hard and really heady to wrap your head around, and I still wouldn't quite say that I've done it, but from what I gather, it's not like there's a nothingness that the universe is going out to. It's more like, imagine you have like a grid of like postage stamps, and those stamps keep getting bigger. The grid goes out infinitely. Because, like, that being said, like, what we call the universe is only the observable universe. And that's just because how light works. Like, we can only pick up things from a certain distance because the universe, there's a point, there's a threshold at the edge of the observable universe where the acceleration of the universe's expansion overcomes light coming towards us. So there is a barrier beyond the observable universe that we will literally never see through the entirety of human history. And that barrier is growing. Like, there are parts that are in the observable universe right now that we haven't seen that are moving away from us. And like, and what that also means is like we will never see it because at some point it'll pass beyond the bounds of what we can see. I'm getting off on a big tangent. But yeah, the universe constantly expanding. And it expanded way faster at the beginning during that cosmic inflation. And when that happened, there's a lot of heat, a lot of energy. Like, this is like so much hotter and more energetic than the core of our sun. Like, it's
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's hard to even picture. To the point where like all matter wasn't even plasma or ionized. It wasn't even like in the form of protons and neutrons. Everything was in quarks as it cooled down a little. And I mean, like, literally, I think half of this is in like Bill Wirt's history of the world, I guess. Top tier YouTube video. But like, as the universe cooled down in a couple of microseconds, those quarks turned into the particles that we know today. And the standard model of physics is like pretty comprehensive these days. Especially with the discovery of the Higgs boson in 2012. We have like we have like an understanding of like the Higgs field and like mass. We have a quantum particle for pretty much everything except for gravity, which is really cool and really complex. But yeah, that's so, and when things cool down further, just um things started clumping together, and a lot of that energy is left over from the Big Bang and is currently chilling out in the universe in the form of microwave radiation. And we can pick up on that microwave radiation, and that's what we call the CMBR, the cosmic microwave background radiation, and that's what gave us a lot of the evidence for the Big Bang. And another cool thing about the CMBR is there are some spots that are more dense with CMBR and spots that are less dense. And I remember I watched a video as to why the formation of the universe, basically the CMBR had to be asymmetrical, or nothing would ever have like collapsed or coalesced into what we call like mass or universe today. As for why it was asymmetrical, there are theories, but I don't think we'll ever have like an actual answer. But yeah, that's kind of like the basics of how modern science and physicists believe the universe started. That being said, we've been answering this question for millennia. Like ancient, I have a lot of experience just culturally with like the Hindu world. So like there are a lot of Hindu beliefs, and that's the thing. Like religion and human culture is always inconsistent, even with itself. That like early Hindu beliefs are very much like the world started like in the ancient Vedic text. There's this giant being called Purusha that like sort of covers the entire universe within him, and like the gods sacrificed Purusha. It's unclear as to whether they sacrificed him to himself or like to some other being. Like it's really weird, complex stuff. But that's what gave rise to the universe. But then later, like cosmogonies would be like, well, actually, the Earth was like, you know, floating in like a divine ocean, and then like it was raised. And obviously, there's a lot of Judeo-Christian lore, like, you know, Adam and Eve and like God, like let there be light, 7 days.
Yeah.
Like we've been answering this question for so long, that you know, I at some point I took a step back and I'm like, what does it matter? Like, yes, it's so cool to me that we do know all these things, but at the end of the day, I'm a dude and I'm living in the 21st century, and I'm just going to go about my life grateful that, you know, I have access to this knowledge, and you know, that knowledge will always be changing as the scientific field advances, or as, you know, humans get more and more thoughts about these things, but like, you know, you never know.
No, I totally get that. I guess, you know, you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, right, it doesn't, at least as far as I know, it doesn't really affect our lives. I mean, who knows, right? But I think, you know, humans have an ever unquenchable thirst for knowledge and for knowing secrets. I mean, you know, and I feel like that boils down to the even the like interpersonal interactions we have with people. I mean, you know, like we say in Spanish, everybody wants to know el chisme, the gossip. Like we always want to know what we don't. We always want to know what we don't know.
No me diga.
Yeah, so straight up, and so I guess, you know, at least the question I'm left with: where'd that singularity come from? You mean somebody was chilling there, like?
I don't know, bro.
Yeah, we don't know, and so and that's why I said, you know, at the, I guess, beginning of this, the introduction to this topic, this is the one question of the four that like I have no take. Like I cannot like oh yeah, I think this or that, because like it kind of just breaks my brain. So, but yeah.
Yeah, bro. I know we ain't got much time left, but like, you know, there's so many thoughts I have as to like, especially what, you know, the deterministic versus the quantum view of the universe gives us in terms of like, you know, fate versus free will, or like the existence of God, or like where we all come from. Like, why does time only move in one direction where entropy increases? And like, you know, there's theories that like, you know, maybe there's a backwards universe that went on the other side of the Big Bang. You know, there's so many thoughts about this that, like, at the end of the day, TLDR, honestly, just like form your own. Like, look up this stuff, and find your own way to it. Cause like, I mentioned that our views are very much shaped by our backgrounds, and I know that because I've given this a lot of thought.
Yeah, and
I'm
also we
able
did
to.
a uniqueness of perspective episode.
Hey yo, quick plug for the Outta Pocket podcast, please.
Yeah, episode
4? Question mark.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's called Everyone Built Different, something like that.
That's true. Everyone do be built different, but yeah, form your own. Because I've given it so much thought, I know personally that like I can see where my influences have come from, and I have like a clear idea of like, okay, like this is why I believe so and so. But like, it doesn't really matter because like it's my opinion at the end of the day, and like,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, that's about our time, man.
Yeah, that's our time.
Always a pleasure talking to you, bro.
Pleasure talking to you too.
Take it out. You've been listening to 101.1 FM, WBRU LP, WFOO LP, WVVX Providence.
You guys should check us out on the Outta Pocket podcast website. That's www.theoutapocketpodcast.com.
And also, I say this every episode, but we have a contact page on our website. So, you could check out our episodes online. You could check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and let us know on the contact page. Shoot us an email. What did you like? What didn't you like? Any suggestions? Etc. Thank you for tuning in to the Outta Pocket Podcast. We'll see you next week. And, guys, like, take care of yourselves. It's rough out here, and it's okay to take time for yourselves.
Yeah.
And yeah,
watch our Workaholics episode. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed the intro episode to this new segment we want to start on our show, or this new series we want to start on our show, Quickfire Philosophy. But yeah, catch you guys later and take care.